Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Minutes with M&M. I'm Mena, this is Miss San, and Happy New Year. It doesn't feel that long because we literally just released a video a couple days ago, but we wanted to ring in the new year with a TV show that we really like that was pretty popular. If you like it, yay. I hope you let us know what your thoughts are. And Bojack Horseman. So this was a really good animated TV show. It was an adult animated TV show, which is something you notice the further you get on into the show. But the thing we really wanted to talk about was mental health portrayal in the show. It was a very big theme at multiple points in time. And I think it did a very, very good job of kind of reflecting what mental health is like for a lot of people. And it ranged across different kinds of mental health stuff. So I really appreciate that. And we kind of want to touch on our favorite representation or storylines or arcs that revolved around mental health on the show.
There's just a lot of examples that we can draw from, but I wanted to talk about Beatrice Sugarman, who was Bojack's mom. Yeah, she is a horrible mom to Bojack, but her life was just sad, and I like how it was portrayed. It was done very, very well. It was also very impressive because I think she only got like maybe 2 or 3 episodes where they really dove into like the background of what happened in her life, and they showed us how she meets Butterscotch Horseman, who is Bojack's dad. And it was an act of rebellion actually that made her like get with him in the first place, but then she got pregnant. And then it was like this whole fairy tale, this promise of a fairy tale life. And it was just nothing that she could ever imagine. Like it was just not what she thought. And she kind of had to spend her whole life with this baby that she didn't really want. And with this man who basically hated her, like, to be honest.
Yeah.
To be very honest. I like how it was portrayed, and I like how realistic it is, because if you look at her dad was also a very shitty dad, and he
Lobotomized her mom.
Basically, and she didn't grow up in an environment that was great. She was rich, she had everything that she needed, but she just didn't have like the support of like a parent. So the fact that she decided to raise this child with this man, it's like you don't even have any example to draw from. And I think she was also bullied in school, so she had all of that going on for her. Yeah. They threw her off that ladder, I remember.
I remember her brother dying, but I don't remember her being bullied.
Oh, she was bullied. She was bullied in school.
Why was she bullied?
For just being lame.
Are we the bullies?
Yeah, and she really internalized all of that stuff. And when she married Butterscotch and he was just he just blamed her for all his failures, she took all of that angst and then she put it on Bojack. So it was just a cycle of just no one wanted to be in this situation and everything just kind of fell on Bojack. And we see how he went on to kind of hurt other people because of his upbringing. And yeah, I just kind of liked how she was just like this horrible person that was never redeemed. There wasn't like any one redeemable moment. And I think that that's real, because sometimes a lot of TV shows try to do this thing where people have bad parents and who had bad parents, and then later on in life, when their kids are grown, they kind of come around and it's like, oh, let me try and be in your life now. That happens, yes, but I like that they showed us this part where it was like, your mom is shitty. Like it's not gonna change. She's not gonna give you what you want, because she doesn't have it in her, and she just is not ever going to acknowledge you or tell you that she's proud of you and all of that. So I just really enjoyed her entire storyline. It was sad. I felt sad for her because I just felt like it was a horrible life that she was in, and her husband was just horrible, and he impregnated Henrietta, who was their maid, and she had to deal with all of that as well. And then
because she shipped the baby away, but
she had to deal with just living in the house with that man. Like it was
I guess. I think the Sugarmans and the Horsemans are great. Both of their names end with man, which is funny because they're horses. But I think that's a really good depiction of generational trauma, but also of how even though bad things happen to you, it doesn't make it okay for you to do bad things to other people.
Yeah.
So like, you know what? Beatrice did have a shitty situation. Her brother died, her mom was lobotomized, which we said already.
Yeah.
But it didn't make it okay that she destroyed Bojack's life. And similarly, Bojack growing up with those two people as parents didn't make it okay for the horrible things that she did. So even it's a realistic, you know, when horrible things happen to you, it can make you shitty, but it doesn't make it okay. And I know that in a lot of TV shows, that's kind of what happens. We meet a bad character and then we find out their like past was, oh, this bad thing happened to them. And then we're sympathetic to them and then they become a better person. And that's kind of the story arc. But it's like, okay, but like you can't just do bad things and have it be okay. And I really like that with Bojack. The final season really solidified that. Like he wanted to be better and he made the changes, but it was still like, just because you've now realized at 50 that you should be a better person doesn't mean that all the people you've hurt are just going to forgive you and let you into their lives. And I think it was painful for him, but like that, you know, that final conversation that he has with Diane and Todd and the happy one,
Mr. Peanut Butter.
Mr. Peanut Butter, really show that, you know, we understand that you're trying your best and we get that you're not necessarily who you were before, but that doesn't immediately fix everything. And I really like that because I think a big theme throughout the show is Bojack's personal mental health. Like we see other people struggling with their demons, but Bojack, God, his parents messed him up. And that's, you know, at a point it becomes a cop-out. You're like, when you're 30 years old and you're hurting people, you can't be like, my mommy was mean to me anymore. But that's also kind of unfortunate because my mommy was mean to me and my brain started working differently. Like I really do have these things that need to be dealt with. And then it, you know, when you give someone money and fame and adoring fans for years, they're not gonna make good choices. And I appreciated seeing Sarah Lynn and seeing an alternative viewpoint where Bojack is kind of a parental figure, but horrible. And seeing what happens when a child who starts out kind of okay is put into the system and again is, you know, craving that attention and adoration and doing all the drugs, and then, you know, we know how Sarah Lynn's story ends. She dies and it's devastating, but it's also like really realistic for a lot of child stars, but also people who don't get a childhood and then are just surrounded with horrible elements at all points in time. And it was really sad. Like Sarah Lynn's death is like one of the saddest things that happens in the entire show, and it's just like, bro, can't like.
I know. Even her tagline, "That's too much, man." Like that's too much, man. But it's I really agree with you. Generational trauma it really sucks, right? Because what I really like about Bojack is that he's a shitty person who knows that he's a shitty person. I hate it so much when people like hurt people and like do horrible things, but they still think that they're like good. They're like, oh yeah, I just made a mistake. You know, I'm not what I did. No, you did bad things. You're a bad person.
That's right. But you know what? It took Bojack a while to get there though, because a lot of it, he was very defensive at a lot of times. Where it was like, I didn't mean to do that, or I didn't see that way. And I think the thing that made it hard is because sometimes he was right. Like sometimes it is a gray situation where he's not entirely in the wrong, but things have gone too far. And I sympathize with him. But through the eyes of other characters, we definitely get to see that just because you're in a bad place doesn't mean you have to hurt others. Not saying that it's better to hurt yourself, but I think Diane is a perfect example of that, where, you know, she had all this self-loathing and like, you know, a lack of belief in herself and all this anxiety. And yeah, she was kind of sarcastic, but she wasn't hurtful. Like she did a couple of things where I know, you know, choices, but overall the person that she was hurting the most was herself. And I love that her working through her issues, you know, realizing that therapy and medication is what she needs, and stepping outside that belief of, you know, when I take my meds, I gain weight. You know, she wasn't focusing on needing to be skinny. She was focusing on needing to be healthy and opening herself up to love, because Diane did not make all the best decisions romantically. I think the final season is a very strong season because a lot of the characters kind of look back at themselves and inwards and go, you know, what are the issues that I'm facing? What can I do to deal with them? And in a rare move for a lot of TV shows, every single one of the main characters self-reflected and I think ended up better than they started. This
Diane's entire like character arc is just perfect to me. Like it was done really well. She's a really well-rounded character, and that's really had to do with animation as well, especially if you're talking about these very, very serious issues. She started off as a ghostwriter, right? And that just showed already that she was very insecure in herself. She didn't want to be out there. She had thoughts, but she didn't want to voice them. So she was going to be someone's ghostwriter and just write their own life story, while her entire life is just like she didn't really speak up for herself. So even when she was with like Mr. Peanut Butter and he would do all these things and she's like, hey, like I didn't ask for this, like I don't want this. She never really tells him, what exactly do you want? You know, like how do you want it? I feel like she had a lot of struggles in figuring out what she wanted for herself and what she wanted to do, and even just putting herself out there. So she did these random things like going to Cordovia to like, you know, try and like save lives, but ultimately everything kind of came crashing down when she broke up with, when she and Mr. Peanut Butter got a divorce. And then she was like, what's my life purpose? Like, you know, I've just allowed things to happen to me without really speaking up. And even when I don't really like something or I'm uncomfortable, I don't say anything, because it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just a matter of like, she just thinks that she is the problem, and she's like, maybe she's asking for too much, and maybe this is the best. Like Mr. Peanut Butter was basically love bombing her. Like it was a lot, and but I feel like, again, that was just a marriage doomed to fail just based on Diane's character. And then his character, like, she needed to stand up for herself at a certain point in time and realize that this doesn't work and you guys don't have to be together, and you can make something more of yourself, like if you kind of diverse from him.
No, you're right. And I think it was also a good way to kind of see how depression looks different on everyone. So she wasn't like Bojack, where she's drunk all the time or she's having damaging sex with strangers. I mean, she was having interactions with people she shouldn't have been, but like it was more, again, like I said, just very, very internalized. Like if you don't know, you just think like she's kind of this sarcastic person, but like she's deeply unhappy. And it's very easy to miss it in people like that. So I like that versus, again, someone like Bojack, who's like, we had the episode where he is, you know, we hear his inner monologue, and it is, that episode wrecks me because, girl, I relate. I am a trash, horrible person who makes terrible decisions. Everyone hates me. And I like, it is very, very good writing, good depiction, but also realistic. So even though we hadn't heard Bojack's inner monologue before, and hearing it was hurtful, but at no point was I shocked. I was like, oh my God, I was like, yeah, this is exactly how you feel about yourself, and it shows in the way you treat yourself and treat others around you. If we had heard that as Diane's monologue, I would have been shook. I'm like, oh my God, this is how you feel about yourself, even though they had similar issues. So I like that on the face of it, you don't really know what someone's going through. And multiple characters, you know, with Todd, it's insinuated that he has like ADHD, which honestly, I'm glad there's an explanation for Todd, because I did not enjoy his shenanigans. But you know, so in addition to him needing to mature and figuring out who he was also kind of just like catching himself. Like you can't just be going off on these random tangents that you're not in control of. But all of the characters had different things they were struggling with. And maybe, you know, what's her name?
Princess Caroline.
Princess Caroline's main, you know, thing that we see on screen that she kind of pushes for the most is wanting to be a mother. And, you know, we find out her entire backstory and like the secret miscarriages and how much it tortures her that she doesn't have a child, to the point that like it basically ruins a quote unquote perfect relationship for her. And, you know, we've said this a couple of times. I'm not a big fan of women who put having a child before everything else, and to the detriment of other aspects of her life, because at the end of the day, she does decide to adopt, and I'm still kind of like, you could have adopted with your mouse boyfriend, but okay. But you like, that's her thing. So, you know, she's put together in as much as she is, and she can fix everything because she's Princess Caroline, but she's also like a mess. Like she's hooking up with Bojack for years on and off, even though he never really gives her the commitment that she needs. You know, she's not sure about where her career is going, and you know, eventually she figures it out, and people look at her as this person that can do everything. And you know, when she becomes a mom, she's trying to be super mom and do all things, but like she's falling apart because it's impossible to do all these things, especially by herself, which is something she needed to learn, which was part of her breaking up with her boyfriend and going at it solo. And it's like, I'm glad she learned that, and you know, she ends up with Jonah and everything, but like all of these characters have these things, these demons that they're dealing with that are so realistic.
Yeah, I really like Princess Caroline's story and her entire thing, because it just shows how hard it is to tell what someone is really going through. Because if someone, like Mena mentioned, if someone looks at Princess Caroline, they would be like, oh, she's an agent, she's always on top of her shit, you know, she can fix any problem. But she also had, you know, self-esteem issues. She also had like issues with commitment. She also had like just insecurities that she was dealing with in her day-to-day life, and maybe she threw her all into work because she told herself, like, you know, in her relationship or in her personal like relationship, you know, things can go like left. She doesn't really care, but like as long as she's this person and everyone else knows that she's this person, then she can keep living under this whole facade. But yeah, sleeping with Bojack for years, knowing fully well that he doesn't really care about her, like, it's also a big tell, because she did love Bojack.
Yeah.
And she would do anything for him. And Bojack knew that, and he took advantage of that. And he would always call her up randomly, even when she's going through like the deepest things ever. It's ridiculous. You know when annoying Twitter people say, check on your strong friends?
Check on Princess Caroline.
Basically. But yeah, this show is perfect.
It's really good.
Like,
but I really like that, pointing out that Princess Caroline was actually in love with Bojack. And I think it, like, obviously him and Diane were never going to be a thing, but she did really care about him. And like, there were women that cared about Bojack. And I know, like, you know, he eventually develops a relationship with Holly, but like that also falls apart because of his actions. But there were people around him who loved him, wanted the best for him, were willing to support him, and wanted him to change. And it just, nothing was able to happen until he wanted it to happen. But like, Princess Caroline was in his life for decades. Like, this was not someone who came into his life and then a year later, like, no, for years there were people who were there for him that he refused to listen to or ask for their help. And so even though we're telling you to check in on your strong friends, you might not be able to do anything about it until they're ready to look in. But
exactly.
It was very frustrating. But I do like that, you know, of the three characters we mentioned, you can trace back all their issues to their parents.
100%.
Like, look, guys, it sounds funny, but don't have kids until you've dealt with your stuff, because you do not need to mess a person up. And that's what happens when you have, and I'm not saying like you need to be like rich or perfect, but maybe don't give your kids literally the baggage of 500 people. So we have Bojack, and we talked about his parents, but then you also have Princess Caroline, and her stuff is like growing up in poverty, and her mom, you know, encouraging her to sleep with a wealthy man to make her life. And like, now we have adult her who pours everything into working, and her priority is her career and feeling independent and strong. That's because she didn't have that security when she was a kid, and anything could go wrong. And, you know, things did go left when she was sleeping with the rich man's child, but that's a whole other thing. Similarly, you have Diane, whose entire family treats her like the scapegoats. And of course she internalizes all this self-hate because they all treat her like she's horrible, even though she's the only reasonable person. I just like seeing that people's flaws come from somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
You don't just wake up one day and you're shitty. Like, no, something happened, and maybe it's not always your parents. A lot of the time it is your parents, but sometimes, like someone like Sarah Lynn, like, yeah, her mom wasn't great, but if she wasn't in the industry, she probably would have been okay. Maybe not great, but okay. Although, like, the only person who I'm just side-eyeing is Todd. He had this whole thing about his mom remarrying a really regular guy, but that's Todd. But everyone else, the show, like, it's a mix of, you know, yes, the experiences you go through, but like, again, Diane gets on medication, but sometimes it's not just what's happening around you. You actually need medical or medical support to get to where you're going through. And I like that was part of it, because with Bojack, it was a lot of talking and reflecting and, you know, what I would say is equivalent to talk therapy, but not, because he just kind of said, wow, I'm a shitty person, I'm going to be better. But other characters needed more than that. And some people leaned on others. So I think Princess Caroline is an example of like her being able to open herself up to Jonah is a really big step forward for her, and saying, you know, I can't do this by myself. Or even hiring Todd as a babysitter and saying, wow, I needed, like, her taking steps to be better was leaning on others. Bojack was self-reflection. Diane was taking medication and, you know, opening herself up. So like, I like that it's not just one path. You're not just going to get better because you do X, Y, Z. It might not be what the fit is for you, but.
And I also like that it's also a little bit of who you have around you. Unfortunately, Diane and Bojack were just bad for each other, and they kind of enabled each other. And once she got out of that environment, once she moved to Chicago, she met Guy, who was a supportive boyfriend. And even though she was still on antidepressants, she was still a little bit depressed, and she was struggling to write her book. And that could have gone left, you know, if she was maybe still with Bojack or still in the Hollywood in that environment. But because of the support she had from Guy and, you know, also from Princess Caroline, I think Princess Caroline also came through for her. There was this particular scene that really got to me where she was struggling to write about her story and her trauma, and she just randomly wrote this more light novel about like a female detective, and Princess Caroline was like, this is great, I'm going to sell this. And she's like, well, what about all my trauma? Like, what was that for? Like, if I can't write about it, then what is it for? And that's like so true with like, once you've gone through a lot, you find yourself asking like, why? What's the point of it all? What was the reason?
What was the reason,
right? And like, Princess Caroline just goes, I don't know. And that's what I love so much about the show, because a lot of these answers, no one knows, right? We're all going through shit in life. And I hate when TV shows try to do this whole, oh yeah, you will know the reason in your heart. Like, you know, some random reason. Like, just say you don't know. I love when characters say I don't know, because it just makes me feel validated. Like, no one knows why things happen to us. No one knows why anyone deserved what they got. We just have to kind of move on. And Diane had to move on. She had to just kind of drop the entire baggage and stop trying to take herself back to like all the hurt that she had experienced, and she could just write like something fun and just move on with her life with her partner. And like, yeah, I love her storyline so much.
No, but I love that, and I agree with every single thing you just said. Bro, sometimes there is no reason, or we won't know the reason, and you can't keep waiting for this magical moment that will make everything okay. You have to start trying to be okay right now. And I really appreciate that. Okay, so we don't like Mr. Peanut Butter. Yeah. He's madly obnoxious, but that's not the point. His positivity and like quote unquote goodness, I like that everyone was around him, and this is not to say he was a bad friend or anything, but all of that didn't help anyone. Like, Diane struggled so much even when she was with Mr. Happy, and some of it is because obviously they weren't meant to be long term, and you know, his issues with dating younger girls and them changing. But part of that was his blind optimism. Like, that's not what she needed. Like, when you mentioned Guy being a supportive figure, I'm just imagining if she was still with Mr. Peanut Butter, I don't see him giving her what she needed. I'm sure he would have been like, oh, you're so great, wonderful. Oh.
He doesn't listen to any of his partners. He just doesn't listen. And I guess the show was trying to show us that like some people who are like extra positive and extra cheerful also have their shit to deal with. But Mr. Peanut Butter didn't deal with any of his shit. He just drove away like 3 different wives or something. Like, I don't even know. Like,
I'm screaming. But yeah, so like, you know, basically that what you need isn't always what you think it is. Because I'm sure like it sounds great to be around someone who's really positive and always encouraging you and believes in you, and is always kind of not a yes man per se, but just quote unquote a ray of sunshine. But God, he was exhausting. And I'm glad that, you know, even though at the end of the day he was there for Bojack, and you know, him and Bojack kind of came to the realization around the same time, like, oh, we're old men who need to act like old men instead of being around young people all the time. He had his own growth to go through, and others didn't really respond in the healthiest way to his brand of positivity. What they needed was something else. And I like that, because I think a lot of people approach like difficulty with like, yeah, I'm just gonna be super positive. It's like, bro, this is not it. This is not fixing any of the problems that are going on right now. But yeah, no, it was a really good show, and there's so much more we could touch, and there's so many storylines and specific episodes where things happen where you can really say, okay, this is my life, or this is someone I know. It was so good.
It was so good. Like, I don't hate anything about the show. It's amazing. And I don't even watch, yes, I know, fight me, I don't watch animated shows. I don't watch anything in 2D, like any 2-dimensional show. It feels very impersonal, but somehow this is the most personal show I've ever watched, and I watch it to the end. That's just amazing. Like, I love it so much. Like, I would package the show and just like if I could only watch one show over and over again for the rest of my life, it's probably be this show.
Really? That is high praise.
Like, okay, yes, it's deep, but it's also fun. Like, there's animals. There's like...
No, it's a funny show. But no, you know what? Hey, I love that for you. I like that you can pick a show, because I'd be like, shoot me, just shoot me now.
Yes, but you know, I was just trying to emphasize how much I really, really, really love the show. It's like one of my top 5 shows of all time.
No, it's really good. And I like that it got to show a wide range of things. Because you're right, there's some episodes that I watched and I cried. I was just like, life is not worth living. But there are also episodes that I just laughed a ton because it's so funny. So I'm really happy they put it out there. I think it would have been hard to do with human beings. I think this is a show that only got to succeed because it was animated. I don't see a way it could have been done any other way.
Yeah.
But such a good show. Such a great cast. A great amount of diversity in thought and in behaviors that I don't see we get to see on TV a lot. Also, my absolute favoriteest thing of all is just Bojack repeatedly coming to the conclusion and announcing that he's garbage. And no, but you know what? There are so many shows with toxic masculine leads where they're horrible in various ways, but like they're funny or they're rich or women like them. And then like people watch the show and walk away with the idea of, oh, this guy is so cool. And like, Bojack is like, no, this is bad. Do not aspire to be me. Do not aspire to be like me. I am broken and I need to be fixed. And really goes on that journey. And I know some other shows do, like, I know you don't watch like a ton of TV shows, but the newest season of Rick and Morty, like Rick is kind of, I feel like the creators realized what happened when the fans were upset. They're like, please do not want to be like this man. But I think Bojack is one of the shows that does it really, really well. So you can't really sit back and go, oh, this is someone I want to be like.
Yeah.
And I think we need more of that. I think a lot of shows make the mistake of wanting the protagonist to be likable and someone that you want everyone to be like. But I love Bojack the show, and I like Bojack the character. I want him to be happy. But I also have no problems being like, you were not great and you have so much stuff to deal with. So that's also something I really, really love about the show. But yeah, that was us talking about, I guess, a little bit about everything about the show and the character arcs and the development that we got to shoot. But really just getting to see the real human elements in these cartoon animals was something that I think a lot of the fans resonated with. So yeah, I think we're going to talk about the show again.
Yeah, 100%.
There's just so much
to cover. But as you know, for right now, I feel like we've said enough. Just let us know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't seen the show, be sure to check it out.
Watch it.
Yeah, you would not regret it. Like, I promise you wouldn't. Well, thank you for sticking with us again for another episode. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.